to repeat testimony previously given by others. Citizens may address the commission on agenda items by responding to the chair's call for speakers during discussion on each item and signing the speaker's log at the podium. All comments must be relative to the item. The chair or presiding officer may, in his or her discretion, prohibit a person from addressing the committee and or remove that person from the council chambers if that person commits any disorderly or disruptive behavior. Please see the agenda for more information about these requirements. If you are parked in the Sheridan Walker parking garage north of John Rex Elementary School or in the Arts District parking garage immediately south of City Hall, staff can provide a parking validation ticket for you. The agenda and documents are located at https://okc.primegov.com/public/portal. You will then select the Urban Design Commission meeting, then click on an agenda item and the relevant documents will come up below the item. Keith, will you please call the roll?
Payton. Paytoni. Blatt.
Present.
Kya. Charnico.
Present.
Dixon-Oso.
Present.
Peoples.
Present.
We have quorum.
Thank you. First item on the agenda is approval of the minutes. They were included in your packet. If there's no questions or comments on the minutes, I'll entertain a motion. Would anyone like to provide a motion on the minutes?
I'll move approval. I don't see the option on here. Are we not using PrimeGov anymore? I'm not sure. Okay, there we go.
I have a motion and a second. You can cast your votes.
I'm not given the option to vote.
What is your?
Push computer.
Oh,
You're on the PowerPoint.
Ah.
There you go.
got it.
Okay, that motion passes. The next item on the agenda is cases withdrawn, and there are none. Item number 4 is continuance requests, and there are none. Item 5 is a consent docket. There are no items. Item 6 is cases for individual consideration. The first item is item A, which is UDCA 22-00025, R2 at 2124 Northwest 23rd Street. Is the applicant present?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This item was heard by the commission back at your last meeting in July, the minutes you just approved, and it wasn't continued to this meeting, but it was approved. However, the way it was approved with a screen fence around the vending machine ended up being considered a front yard fence by the Development Services Department, which issues permits and would issue a permit for this fence. And there are rules about front yard fences that don't allow them to be more than 4 feet tall. And this would have to be at least 8, I think we said in the staff report, to do an adequate job of screening the vending machine in question. Therefore, we brought the application back before the commission for a decision to be made on whether or not you want to stick with the requirement for the fencing option, and that would trigger a requirement for the applicant to file an application for a variance and go before the Board of Adjustment to get a variance for the height of that fence, and also for the fact that the fence is not an open design, because if it was an open design, then it wouldn't screen the vending machine. So they would have to get 2 variances essentially for height and for the design of the fence itself. As you're aware, that is some additional time for the applicant as well as some significant additional cost. The applicant has asked us to bring this back to you because they'd like to avoid that additional cost and that additional time and just choose to go with the option that involves the landscaping only as opposed to requiring the fence. I think we've laid out for you in our staff report the pros and cons of both options. And we've given the commission a recommendation that gives you the option of going either way, whichever you feel is appropriate under the circumstances. In the staff report, under the staff recommendation section, there are a set of conditions of approval that go with either option. And we'd ask that the commission just go off of that section of the staff report when making your motion. That completes our presentation. We're prepared to respond to any questions the commission may have.
Do we have any questions for staff? Would the applicant like to add anything?
I would. I just want to remind all the commissioners, landscaping is a tool that's very common and effectively used for screening, especially items like this. Whereas a variance for that type of fence, I think would be very hard to obtain, as well as it's, kind of goes against what the variance process is all about, which is about identifying certain situations that would need an exception to the zoning ordinance. I don't know that we meet that here, given that it's a landscape or a screening option when landscape is typically used as a screening option. So we're hoping that the landscape option is great with you all. I brought some visualization. I know y'all can't accept anything, but I would suggest doing either a Taylor juniper, a series of Taylor junipers, which grow tall. They grow about 3 to 5 feet a year. They're very hardy. They love full sun. And they can also be very effective in a hedge. So here's an example, just a visual example. It's evergreen as well, and they are native, of course. The other option would be Nellie Stevens hollies, which we talked about at the last meeting. Similar, they grow about 2 to 3 feet per year. They're evergreen, they grow well in full sun, as well as they're native to Oklahoma. So both of these evergreen options would, I think, effectively screen the ice and water machine. And, finally, I would just mention that the longer we take in doing this, the longer they go without being screened. And I think that's the whole reason we're here, is to get this screening up. So if we can get the approval today, we can get this landscaping installed and make the street more beautiful, which is the whole goal. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions for the applicant? Would anybody in the audience like to speak to this? Does the commission want to put forth a motion? I'll give a little commentary on my own. I agree that I don't think the intent that we gave in the last meeting was to subject this project to a variance and a whole set of procedures that's really against what the intent of the ordinances are. I don't think that's really the purpose of it. I think the screening needs to happen. I think it needs to be done in a way that's not an undue burden. I'm not the one to cast the first motion, but I'll at least start the conversation that way.
So I'll put forward a motion to approve the application on the basis that the project meets the regulations and guidelines of the Urban Design Overlay District zoning ordinance as referenced in section C and D of the staff report, with the condition that the applicant submit a revised landscape plan for the site highlighting the location of vending machines, along with details on the locations and species and size of planting of the trees. The plan shall reference the required site distance triangle. Said plans shall be subject to review and approval of the staff.
I have a motion. And I have a second.
And before we all vote, I, as part of the approval, would it be possible for us to go ahead and determine the height at planting, knowing that both of these grow similarly, about 3 feet per year on average? So I was hoping we could get away with like a 4-foot planting at the time of planting, knowing that within a year it could be at full 8 foot, reaching a maturity level of if it's Taylor junipers, 30 feet, Nellie Stevens hollies grow to about 15 feet. But regardless, we'll be over the machine within a year if we plant at 4 feet. So with that, is everybody okay with that? Just because there's quite a difference in money as far as a 4-foot tall tree versus an 8-foot tall tree. Knowing that they're relatively fast growing, I would hope a 4-foot at planting would be acceptable.
Jorge, do you want to amend your motion to a
Maybe that's a
minimum?
question for staff. I don't know what you all think.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we just leave that to staff, or if staff wants us to make just a modification.
If you want to specify the planting height, the height of the material at planting, you'd probably be best to make that part of the motion.
Okay, so let me withdraw the motion.
I should have mentioned that before.
I think you can just amend it to add.
But I want to ask the commission
Okay.
their thoughts on the height of the tree. Is 4 foot something that everybody's agreeable to? Or is there a desire to make them, my knee jerk is to try to make it a little bit taller. I understand about the 8 foot. I don't think you need to go there.
Typically they range in like 3 to 4 foot height, 5 to 6, like 8 to 12. That's usually how you can purchase them. So I thought, let's stick in the middle there, about 4 to 5 foot, around the 3 to 4 foot at time of planting. Now, the Taylor junipers are a little bit taller. The Nellie Stevens are a little bit wider. So, again, there's give or take a foot there. But if we could just stick with a 4 foot at planting, I think both options that I'll work out with staff. I think 4 foot is an appropriate height to, again, within a year, it'll be fully covering the machine,
Just for reference, the machine is about 8 feet tall.
8 foot tall. Mhm.
I guess I'm apt to split the difference, so I
Okay.
understand what you're saying.
Sure.
So
Five
I'd
to
rather see a 6-foot tree
Okay.
that's going to potentially grow to 8 feet. So I guess if there's no comments, I will modify my,
That's fine with us. Again, it's one of those things, if we can talk about it now, it just helps me to provide a more accurate landscape plan, so.
so do I haven't modified a motion, so I'd rather you just make read it. Okay, let's do that.
Sorry.
Okay, so I am putting forward a motion to approve the application on the basis that the project meets the regulations and guidelines of the Urban Design Overlay District zoning ordinance as referenced in section C and D of the staff report, with the condition that the applicant submit a revised landscape plan for the site highlighting the location of the vending machines along with details on the location, species, and a minimum 6-foot height at planting of the trees. The plan shall reference the required site distance triangle. Said plans shall be subject to review and approval of staff.
I have a motion and a second. If everyone will cast their vote.
Thank you, commissioners.
That motion passes. Thank you. So item B is UDCA-23-00003 at 1929 Northwest 23rd Street for Uptown Northwest 23rd Street. Is the applicant present? Okay. Michael, do you want to present it?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This application is for a property at 1929 Northwest 23rd Street, which is on the north side of Northwest 23rd, just east of Virginia Avenue. This application has been in our hands for quite some time, and we finally obtained a good portion of the amount of detailed information and accurate plans that we needed to provide the commission with a good assessment of the proposal in its entirety. I think we've prepared for you a staff report that identifies quite a bit of the history that's gone along with this case, all the way back to 2022. And then after that, there's a lot of discussion in the report about a variety of ways that what the work that has been done does or does not comply with the applicable regulations and guidelines that pertain to a site in the UD district on 23rd Street. The first issue is that they had proposed, or excuse me, that they had built an ADA parking stall located in front of the main building. There are specific rules for that set forth restrictions for the use of residential structure being converted to commercial or industrial purposes. And part of those rules talk about not paving the front yard at all, and specifically not paving it for the use of parking or maneuvering for parking in front of the structure, and that all the parking should be behind the building. We stand behind that guideline, or excuse me, that regulation, and we believe that there still could be an opportunity to address the ADA access for this use and this structure in an area behind the building. It may be more costly, it may be more complicated, but it's also more in compliance with the regulations that we have in front of us to work with. There's also another regulation that talks about use of the public right-of-way, and that no parking stalls should be proposed in those areas. So that's another item where a variance would be required to leave the paving and the parking lot, or excuse me, the parking stall in front of the building where it is located today. And we've also talked about parking lot lighting, which is also a requirement. We don't believe at this time that this is a variance situation, simply because we don't know enough about the light coverage at the rear of the parking lot. They have proposed some lighting to be mounted on the rear of the structure. The type of lighting they've shown us appears to shine almost directly downward, and therefore we're doubtful that it will reach the minimum foot candle requirements at the far north end of the parking lot, and we'd like to have some information provided in a photometric survey that will help us to verify whether or not the lighting as proposed does meet that standard, or if additional lighting is required to meet that standard. We also have some guidelines to deal with respect to this project. The first is the building before it was painted was unpainted buff brick. And as the commission is aware, we do have guidelines that advise against the choice to paint unpainted brick, and there's a variety of reasons to that. It damages the brick surface. It can seal moisture in the brick that is already inside the brick, and it also doesn't let the brick breathe like it's supposed to, or it's designed to do. And because of this, it can contribute to structural failures and other kinds of cosmetic issues and concerns, and therefore we stand behind that guideline as well. The unfortunate thing is that we've run into a situation where a lot of these cases where they do paint unpainted brick, it becomes very difficult to remove the paint without damaging the brick beneath the paint. And we believe that the applicant should spend some time exploring what options there are available, and giving us some feedback as to whether there are any methodologies that are possible and applicable to this particular case that would be able to remove this paint without damaging the underlying brick. A couple of other things related to the project. They did remove some iron grates that were on the front windows at the south elevation that faces Northwest 23rd Street. In addition, the windows on that facade were replaced. These windows that were used do not bear any resemblance to the traditional windows that were used on the facade of this building, or the historical types of windows that would have been used at the time the structure was constructed, and therefore we're recommending that the 2 windows at the front elevation be removed and replaced with appropriate windows subject to the approval of staff. Basically, with so many moving parts, and while they've made great strides in giving us a lot of detailed information that we didn't have until just earlier this month, or early in the month of September, we feel there's a lot of information that is still out there that has to be hammered out, and more detail necessary to get closer to a point where we could recommend approval, and therefore we have recommended a continuance on this application to the meeting of January 24th, 2024. Alternatively, if the applicant is not amenable to a continuance, or the commission doesn't feel a continuance is appropriate, the alternative recommendation is for denial. And we're prepared to respond to any questions the commission may have.
Do we have any questions for staff?
I do. So, Michael, I think you may have cleared this up, but when I initially read it, it seemed like your recommendation was for continuation, but it was specific to the ADA parking. But there are other issues above and beyond the ADA parking,
Right.
correct? So,
Right. It's not just the ADA parking, it's also the location of the parking stall from the standpoint of being in the public right-of-way. And then there are other issues with respect to not having enough information on the lighting, and not having any information whatsoever on windows that should be used to replace the ones that were installed.
okay. That's all I had. Just wanted clarification.
And Michael, the other issue was about the paint, right? The paint.
Yes.
Possibly deteriorating the structural integrity of the brick.
That's the purpose of the guideline, and I think
Yeah.
there's a reference to it in the staff report. It talks about the negative attributes that painting unpainted brick can cause. I think painting the brick was one of the things that was pointed to as the collapse of that building in Iowa in the last month, 2 or 3 months, because the brick inside just had too much moisture in it, and it deteriorated and fell apart. So I don't know if that's a significant concern on a building like this. It's only a single-story house, but still, if they had come to us before they started any work, we could have advised them not to do that. And our recommendation is to try and hold to that guideline if at all possible. But as we've mentioned in our report, and we've discussed with other cases that have come before the commission, once it's painted, it becomes very difficult to find a methodology that will work to effectively remove the paint while not disturbing the masonry material underneath.
So if we vote to continue this application based on the staff recommendations, specifically around the ADA parking requirement or stall, will any of the other issues be addressed, or how would that be addressed?
With respect to the parking, they did have, in fact, there is out there, if you go out there today, there's 2 parking stalls built out there in front. One is a standard stall and one's an ADA stall. You'll notice if you look at the plans there in your application packet that they've proposed to remove the standard stall and just leave the ADA stall. What we'd like to have the applicant do between now and the January 24th meeting is look into and document to us that it's physically impossible to put an ADA stall behind the building, or give us a plan, no matter how complicated or pricey it might be, that shows us, oh yeah, we did find a way that we can put the ADA stall behind the building. And if that were to happen, that would take all 3 variance requirements off the table, and we'd only be left with the windows, the lighting, and the paint to deal with at that meeting, if that were the case.
So I think you would want to, if the lighting and the painting and the windows are also concerns as part of a continuance, I think we would want to add those as part of the motion, that it's a motion to continue so that they can come back with either a revision to the application or more information about the hardship related to the parking, more information about the feasibility of removing the paint, the information that's requested about the lighting, a revised design for the windows, et cetera.
Do we have any other questions for staff?
And I would just note that the applicant would need to agree to a continuance, so we'd want to make sure that they're willing to do that.
Good afternoon. I was going to start off with just the question before we go. Is there any desire to continue the case and to have a discussion with staff, or is there a preference to go ahead and move forward with this hearing and see how it all plays out?
I mean, I'm sorry, I'm Alicia Luong, and I'm represent the structure building on Northwest 23rd, 1929 Northwest 23rd. When we got this particular house, it was said it was commercial zone, and we did this in 2020. We have a chiropractic office, which is half a mile down the street. So when we moved to this building, we wanted to be our own building. So we moved it half a mile from the original office. And our goal was to provide care for our patient. That's why when we modified the parking with handicap ramps, so it's easy access. We do install enough light. And as far as I know, there's a big light pole from the street behind the building also, and we submit those in. The window, of course, because of the bar rail, we don't feel it's very safe. You know, these days, nobody do bar rail, so we change it to bright it to make the area look, within, safety for our patient and nice for the community. As far as you know, there's other building that was painting, so we wasn't aware of the paint. We, honestly, I thought, hey, let's make it nice. So that's why, because the old building next to it, there is a couple houses next to it, which one of them is also a doctor's office. He's been occupied there for quite a while. There's other buildings, so we didn't even know that. Of course, my husband, he liked red, so I'm sorry, it's a red flag, but that's his favorite color, and because AmeriHealth, the office, original name, AmeriHealth Chiropractic Clinic, that's why we painted red and we painted door blue to represent American color. So that's the reason why, in terms of the color, that's the why we choose. I mean, red is his color, but I went with it because it say AmeriHealth, it stands for the name of the office. We did install 2 parking space in front for handicapped, so we think it's easy for them to access instead of coming from all the way from the behind of the building. And we also make it long enough so they can get in and out. But as we wasn't aware of the requirement, so we did propose that we're gonna remove one space to it, so it'll be easy to get in. And because of this, we had not been seeing patients for the past more than a half a year because of all of this been going on. So we had to shut down. And my purpose is to get this growing so we can start seeing our patient again, provide community support. And so that's why I'm here today. We did, the architecture, we did have somebody, draw out the line with the parking and everything. It's not in the picture. Is it in the picture?
Do you want to show the site plan
Pull
on
up the site plan.
I have a copy of it that had the draw all of the parking space that required. We even make it longer so patient can have plenty of room to back in and out.
I have a question.
Go right ahead. It's fine.
If they were to move the ADA parking stall to the back side of the building, does this all go away where there's nothing more to discuss? Or we still are going to discuss the windows, the
The three
paint?
variances would all go away, and we wouldn't have to deal with that. We wouldn't need a recommendation to the Board of Adjustment. They wouldn't have to file for a variance. That would all be off the table. However, we would still have the issue of the unpainted brick, which we've asked them to go out and explore methodologies that would be more sensitive and hopefully effectively move the paint, but also effectively protect the brick. We've also asked them to change out the front windows on the south elevation and put in something that is more compatible with the windows that were on that facade of the building before the renovation was done. And the third thing is to give us a photometric survey to make sure that the lights they're showing on the back of the building will reach far enough north to the far north end of the parking lot to meet that foot candle requirement for parking areas, and at the same time not create any off-site glare, which is also part of the lighting requirements. So there's not a lot, but there's less unanswered questions now than there were a month ago, but we still have, we don't know what kind of windows they would like to use to replace the windows they've installed. We don't know if they have any kind of methodology to remove the paint that would be effective and protect the brick, and we don't know if the lighting that they propose that's attached to the rear of the building is sufficient enough to meet the foot candle requirements for the entire parking area on the north side of the building.
Do we have any questions? Go right ahead.
Yeah, sorry. My name's Nick. I'm helping them represent on 1929 Northwest 23rd Street. I was going to let her talk because my voice is going out, but just to give some more information about this parking situation. Per the requirements, there's needed to be 7 parking spaces on the lot. So if we move the ADA parking spot to the back, we now would have to get another variance in order to meet the requirements for the parking. We also require a variance to even have the driveway because they require a 2-way driveway, but this can only have enough room to fit 1 car, and it's actually even small for 1 car. So that was the primary reason to put an ADA stall in the front. They originally put 2, but we revised the plans to now have more landscaping in the front. We'll cut the concrete, no problem, and put new landscaping, trees, and all that. That's not a problem. As far as the lighting goes for the site, I didn't have time to include the pictures on the packet, but I went by there at night. There's street lighting from surrounding structures. There's also the OGE safety lights, which shine onto I know you can't see it up there, but there's there's OGE lights that shine onto the property and provide light for the whole place. There's one more light that could be turned on, which I can have them call. It's $10 a month to include on the OGE, the big floodlights that they have. So if that would help satisfy the lighting requirement, we can definitely do that. But they don't operate at night, so I don't really think the lighting requirement's too major, but we can add the additional lighting if required.
I want to speak to the width of the driveway that he brought up. There is a provision in the code, that same provision I talked about, that restricts the conversion of residential uses to commercial or industrial purposes. There's a provision in that section of the code that allows the 11-foot drive width to be fine.
Okay.
So they would not need a variance for that.
Okay.
And frankly, if they are short on stalls, rather than having a stall out front, I think we'd be more than happy to support a variance for not enough stalls, as opposed to a variance to allow these parking stalls to remain in front of the building.
But looking at the neighboring structures as well, I mean, the next 1, 2, 3, 4, I mean, the whole street, they all have parking stalls in the front, the whole street on both sides.
We made that point in our staff report, and all the information that we've been able to gather and determine on all those conversions, we have no information to indicate that they were done anytime after the establishment of the UD overlay on this part of 23rd Street. So they may have been done, and there probably were not rules to this effect at that time, and so that didn't prevent them from doing that. What we have down the street is what we have down the street. We prefer not for it not to be that way, but that's the way it is. And we can't go out and cite them because they haven't violated anything, because when they did it, it wasn't against the law, against the rules. So, and I can understand why when you buy a building here and you look down the street and see what everybody else has done, you might get the idea that it's okay to go ahead and do the same thing. Unfortunately, in this case, this is being done under the current rules, and under the current rules, there's a variance required to apply to what's been done to the project.
Michael, I have a question. You mentioned the 2 parking spots in the front, that a portion of one was in the city easement. Is that correct? Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, the remaining, for the best we can tell from their plans, even with the front stall being removed and being landscaped, a portion of the ADA stall is actually in the right of way, and that's the reason for the third variance under the public works requirement.
So what they have to do, would that have to be dug up? Is that dirt work?
Well,
they'd have to
or they
pull-
could get a variance for it.
Oh, or they get a variance for it?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Question for staff. The painted brick, is it a non-negotiable item for under urban design overlay?
That's not an urban design regulation. It's specified in the staff report as part of the building rehabilitation and conservation guidelines. And that's a document that the commission has adopted as part and parcel of the rules that they operate under. So it's a guideline, and because it's a guideline, the commission does have the authority and the flexibility to either modify that guideline or waive it and allow it to go forward untouched and leave the paint on the building. But our responsibility as staff is to try and uphold the guidelines we have that are applicable to the project, and that's why we recommended that they explore a way to find some methodology that might be beneficial in helping to effectively remove the paint and preserve the brick.
The brick is red, which is not a terrible color. I mean, you've seen other colors. Also, a lot of homes on that street are more of a blonde brick color. So one option, it could repaint it similar to the rest of the original brick on that street.
Assuming that at the end of exploring the methodologies for paint removal, they don't find one that could effectively do the job, then that would be Plan C, I guess.
Is it not true that one of the things that we're dealing with here is the precedent that we've set on past cases, that we've actually had people already go through the efforts that we're asking for now? And if we deviate from that, then we're going to set 2 precedents with respect to how we address paint on brick or
Right.
painted brick to come.
Right.
And so we've asked this before. It's a process. The paint manufacturers will give guidance on what next steps will be. It's been done. We've ruled on this before. If we go a different route, we're going to start to create a problem.
Yeah, I
with
think the
the
most
precedents
recent
we
case
set.
on 23rd before this commission was a mural down by Atomic Lotus, and they had part of the brick that was painted and part that was unpainted, and they wished to have the mural large enough to move from beyond the painted part of the brick onto unpainted part of the brick. And in that particular case, the commission asked them to reduce the size of the mural to remain only on the painted portion of the brick.
And I'll just add that depending on the texture of the brick and depending on the type of paint that was used, it can be very difficult to remove the paint, but it is doable. There are entire, large commercial buildings here in Oklahoma City that were completely painted, where the paint has been successfully removed and the brick is held up. There are products out there that are specifically made for the removal of paint from the brick in ways that are safe for the brick. So what staff has encouraged applicants to do is to at least investigate the feasibility of removing the paint, to find a, a less visible location on the building where they can test some products and see, does this get, all or the majority of the paint off successfully, and the brick underneath looks good? Does it, leave a lot of paint and it looks worse than it did painted? But to at least pursue an attempt to remove the paint.
And does staff have recommendations on any of those kind of products? Because we don't have experience with removing paint from those kind of bricks.
Yep, we can get you some companies and some product names, and then obviously talking with professionals that work with paint. They will also have suggestions depending on the specific type of paint.
Okay.
It sounds like we have a lot of unresolved things to work on, and I'm wondering if the applicant is willing to agree to a continuance so these things can be worked on.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if that's the case, then I'll need a motion for a continuance, and it's going to be to the January meeting. Is that correct, Michael?
Yes.
So probably in advance of that, just when we're speaking about the concrete in the front of the building, the backside of the parking lot is all paved. And how it is striped is how it's going to be striped, whether there's handicap accessible parking spaces or not. So we're not talking about new construction for parking lot in the back. We're talking about utilizing the back and removing some. I think that is valuable for your knowledge as you go to have the conversations during this continuance.
Yes.
The other thing is that with respect to lighting, what's being asked for is a photometric study, and light suppliers will do that study for you.
Okay.
And it will give a diagram that has points that are 2 or 3 feet apart, and they'll tell you exactly what the foot candle value is that's what's being looked for. So
Okay.
staff can probably give you some recommendations on who could do that. Okay. That would make your life easier
Yes.
when you know what they're expecting to come back with.
And is removing the windows they put in and putting in different windows a guideline or requirement? This is in our guidelines.
So the window that would be a guideline, that we have guidelines that talk about,
Right.
architectural features and that sort of thing. So it would probably be good if the commission does have any feedback for the applicant on the extent to which you think the installed windows are inappropriate, or if everyone thinks that those windows are acceptable, so that they know whether or not they need to research an alternate product.
Do I just say that here?
Yeah, yes, sure.
I think they're acceptable personally. That would be and I also think the paint would be acceptable. I'd be willing to waive that personally. The light, I think, is a little bit different because it is a mixed residential commercial area, and that can really create some problems. And I do think that the variance that needs to be addressed on the parking situation. So those are my opinions.
Do we have precedents? I know we have precedents on the brick. So we have places where we have enforced upon others to go through the process of seeing what happens for removal of brick. But do we have precedents in this situation for windows that we've already acted on and enforced?
Of anybody that's come back to us with a solution that works?
Well,
on
just
paint?
a similar situation where we've said you need to go and show us what it would take to go back into historic proportions.
I don't think in a UD setting, but maybe in HP, I don't know.
I think if this were to come in with the work not having been completed, as a new application, which is how we're supposed to consider it. We're not supposed to be considering it as if it had already occurred, but treating it just like any other applicant where they had not yet done the work. If an applicant were to walk in the door and say, we have these historic windows and we want to replace them, we would advise that you need to go back with a window that's comparable to the historic window design. I can't think of one recently where someone has already done the work and we made them change them out, but it may just be something that hasn't come up on recent cases.
I think as they come back, it needs to be looked at under the lens of, we don't want to set precedents, so the only way that we can not set precedents is to have an extremely compelling reason as to why these windows are the more appropriate scenario, and it can't be cost. It needs to be something other than, so just having yeah.
So,
Well,
ba-
and usually I don't know about their specific case, but normally we have to replace windows for fire safety, that the old windows, they can't hold up and stuff, that they don't open, close, and hold properly. But I don't know about this particular case. Do you remember the old windows?
The old window have bar rails, so you cannot lift it up. They have these bar like back then because it's designed like a house. So for even these days, even if you go buy put a rail on your window, insurance would not sell you that because it's unsafety. If something happened, you cannot escape. That's the reason why we have those bar removed around it. Those are bar because it's not like a key or something that you can unlock. If a fire happened, something happened, you pretty much lock yourself in there. So that's the reason why we remove those bar. And the structure around the window, because it's so old, so we replace it to look at, I mean, we make the front looks nice, so we gotta make the window looks nice too. And it's bright for safety of our patient. While we're there, if something happened, I cannot take everybody out. Yeah, so the purpose of this building was a doctor's office, nothing else. That's the reason why we think of safety first. That's the reason why, because the original, they just have even the step to go up. There's no handicap ramp. We installed that, everything. Even though we don't see a lot of handicap, but we still have it ready for, any situation. That's the reason why we have the window removed, the bar around the window, and make it modern looking. I mean, we're in the 21st new century, so like I said, we wasn't aware that this was urban district, otherwise we would not mess with it, It was it was a mistake, but we thought what is best for the community, for the surrounding area. That's all. That was our intent, the main intention. And we could have get another location, but we choose to be close to the original location, so it'll be easy access for everybody. So that's the reason why we choose this area. That's all. And I just, want to continue, but we are willing to make any change that, as much change as you needed to go back. I don't know how I'm going to go back to urban house, that modern looking, because I don't want to, even with the paint, I don't want to destroy it by repainting it. I mean, it was just something that we did, and I just asked for your, think about, maybe consider it, what we did,
So I zoomed into the photo as close as I could, and at least from my vantage point, it looks like aluminum rather than historic windows. So were they historic windows at one point?
Well, I mean, the best example we have of that is what we had up on the screen a minute ago. I don't know that they're historic, but they were consistent with the architectural style of that building at that time when they were installed. I don't know if they were the original windows that were installed when the building was built, but they are certainly more in character with the architecture of this house than the ones that were installed.
It looks to me like it might be storm windows with the historic window behind
Okay.
it, and then the metal bars over that.
And we don't have any issues with the removal of the bars, so.
Well, the wood you see the separation between, when you look at that, that's like 3 panel, 3 different window. The wood around that, because this building, I don't remember exactly, but it's built in the 30. So over the year, the wood had kind of destroyed around it, surrounded. So when we take the bar out, it was kind of like in bad condition. The reason why is the bar is kind of holding it, but it, you know, over the year with rain, weather change, make a big difference. So when we took the bar out, it was kind of like rotten. So that's the reason why we replace it into like a big panel right now. Part of it is, you know, to brighten up the area. I don't want my waiting area to be dark, insecure. So that's the reason why we did it, to make it wider. We just moved the, when we replaced it, we took out all of those panel out because of the wood has been destroyed over the year, man.
But I think to elaborate on what Commissioner Blatt was mentioning is it would be valuable if you could come to us with justifications.
Like I said, it was, we didn't even know, and I really apologize. You know, I don't have any word to say. I mean, like, if I could go back, I would go back. But as of right now, because the window has already been done, it's already been placed, we replaced with the current requirement, the window that's right now, that's why we send in this in. And so that's, like I say, I mean, I wish I could go back and just remove it, but I really can't go back in time. I'm sorry, I can't really. So I'm asking for your understanding my situation at the time. And like I said, we are willing to do what is best, you know, to fix this situation. I just need your help. I'm clueless right now. And this building has been sitting there for several months doing nothing, and I'm really clueless. I'm asking for your help. What do I need to do? I mean, we try to fix whatever we can, and we will remove one of the handicap, install landscape. We even add, if you want to add more light, I will add more light. You know, I don't even know what else to do. I cannot bring back an old window. I'm serious, I cannot bring back an old window. So, I mean, I don't know who would sell those old windows either for me to bring it back. So
I think there are people in the community, probably architects, that can help piece this together for you. And I know we can't go back in time, but maybe there's some justification that they can provide that can help us be better educated as to why we should allow it. And again, you know, some of these, like the light studies, that's pretty easy to do. And you could probably get it done for free. The paint, that'll probably cost you a little bit, but in the past, we've had people come in here and present their case. So I think you need somebody to kind of quarterback this for you and put all the pieces together and put us in a position where we can consider it further.
Now that the commission has discussed it and talked through some of the issues, now that staff has had the opportunity to look through the documentation of everything, I think you've corresponded with Michael primarily via phone calls and email, but if you want to set up a time to come in, bring in whoever you like to assist. If Nick wants to come in and meet with staff soon, you know, in plenty of time before that next meeting, whether it's continued, I think we could talk through your options, how to make your best case for the things that you would prefer to keep as is, options for what things to replace and how to pursue that, and hopefully get you in good shape for the next round of discussion.
Yeah, yes, that will be appreciated, because I really don't want to, you know, come back and continue at where I'm left off the last time, but like I said, you know, we're trying our best, but I guess I just need guideline, you know, who to meet. So if you can let me know, I would be happy to sit down with somebody that's more experience in this to help me sort through this instead of just email, and send thing, and maybe I got in the wrong direction. But that would be appreciated.
Comment on the timeline. The next meeting is January 24th. Is there a way to push that up to a sooner timeline?
So the November meeting is November 15th, which would be I don't think that's enough time for them to get the homework done that they need to be able to come back and have a productive discussion with you all. Our next option after that would be the December 20th meeting instead of the January meeting. So we could do that instead of January, but we would just have to move quickly on coordinating with them to get everything pulled
Yeah.
together.
As a business owner, I can feel your pain because this is not even the home that you live in. This is your business. So not having income or not having operating your business, I think you should try to be more aggressive with this timeline and work with staff to figure out what item you need to address. It seemed like this meeting, we're just running in circle and we're not wasting time.
I do think that having somebody at the table with you, like what Commissioner Charnico said about maybe bringing in an architect and having that individual show you the path to getting open for business.
Okay.
Because that's the goal, open for business. What does it take to do that? And if that means removing parking spaces in the front, but that gets you open for business, that's your best option. If that means replacing a window, but that gets you open for business, rather than a process that's going to go months down the road, I think that you want to try exactly what was said about trying to get to the December meeting rather than the January meeting that's 30 days prior. I think that's going to be in your best interest, but you need to have somebody at the table who can show you a path to getting your business open. And that's a professional who can help you do that. Can
I
you
do
provide
want to point out that we didn't just arbitrarily pick the January meeting date. This application was filed by the applicant back in March or April, and we're now in October. So there's been a history of not being able to get all the details and information we need on a timely basis. And based on that history, we thought the January meeting date would be more appropriate. But if they want to go to December, we can accommodate that, but they're going to have to perform differently than they have in the past.
So if this is continued to the December meeting, a continuance, and then that is missed, can it then be pushed to January, or does something?
Yeah,
Okay.
if you continue it to December and for whatever reason we don't have all the information that we've told them we need, then we would just put it on the agenda in December and continue it again
But I do
to the
think
January meeting, so.
that having somebody, a professional, who can be the bridge for your conversation, who can show you this is what's actually required to be open and earning revenue for your business, that's what you want. That's the goal. You don't want to continue discussing it. You don't want to continue debating it. You want to have your business open. And that's the group, the individual. And I think staff can probably give you guidance on who might be able to assist you with that process.
Okay.
So staff can help you with brick and with light and with architect or professional.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to have to be somebody that's specialized. You've got some very difficult challenges here, and you need somebody that's specialized with this type of work. And I suspect the city can get that for you.
All right. Thank you.
So I'm going to entertain a motion for continuance to the December meeting.
I will move to continue to the December 20th meeting, 2024, to allow the applicant to present evidence of
2023.
2023, yeah, sorry. Not that far, yes. 2023, to allow applicant to present evidence of the constraint that presents the location of the ADA parking stall to present information staff has requested about lighting, about windows, and about brick.
I'd like to second.
I have a motion and a second. Everyone can cast their vote. Okay, that motion passes. Thank you. I know that this is challenging, but just hang with us. We'll get through it.
Thank you so much.
Next item on the agenda is UDCA 23-00027 at 2409 North Robinson Avenue in Uptown Northwest 23rd Street. Is the applicant present? Michael, do you want to present it?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This application is for a multifamily structure at 2409 North Robinson Avenue, which is on the west side of North Robinson, just north of Northwest 23rd Street, and it happens to be the last lot on Robinson that's inside the UD district. So just have to be caught up in this set of regulations and this process, design review process. You'll notice a lot of similarities between this case and the previous case in that some work, actually in this case, a lot of work was done on the building without having gone through the process. And as in that case, the similar result is here is that a lot of the work that was done was not consistent with what we would like to see with the guidelines that are applicable from the Building Conservation and Rehabilitation Guidelines document. So in our staff report, we've outlined all the concerns and all the areas that present a situation for that needs to be resolved through this process. And basically, there's some balcony railings that were removed that we believe should be replaced. There are some round wooden columns that were removed that were replaced with square wooden posts that are on top of brick pilasters. There are windows, 4 windows on the front facade, the east facade that faces North Robinson Avenue that again are not consistent with the historical type windows that were there before they were replaced. And the door was replaced and the side lights on that front door entry were also replaced. And in summary, our recommendation for this project is that the Commission approve the project, but with a series of conditions that relate to all those items that I just related to the Commission, and that requires the replacement of the 4 windows, the removal of the side lights at the entry door, the replacement of the door with a new door type that is more complementary to the architectural style that was there before the renovations were done. The replacement of the balcony railing on top of the canopy at the east elevation, and the replacement of the round wooden posts that were removed with new round wooden posts. And we've made the concession that those can be mounted on top of the brick pilasters that were installed as part of the renovation. That essentially wraps up our presentation on this particular case, and we're prepared to respond to any questions the Commission may have.
Oh, I was just going to add a note. Michael mentioned that this is right on the edge of the urban design district. It abuts the Jefferson Park Historic Landmark District as far as city zoning is concerned, but it is within the boundary of the Jefferson Park National Register Historic District. Those boundaries don't match from the National Register to the city zoning, so it is a contributing property to the National Register District. And it would qualify for historic tax credits if you'd ever like to discuss that.
Okay.
You should discuss that,
Okay.
seriously.
A lot of money.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sarah Whittingham.
Do we have,
we-
just
yeah, go
one,
ahead.
1 second, do we have any questions for staff before we get started? Okay,
What was your,
do we have any questions for staff? Okay,
Yeah, I mean, we we purchased this property.
would you
back to-
mention your name?
Sarah Whittingham.
And
Yeah, the
address?
2409
Thank
North
you.
Robinson. We purchased this property in the pandemic. As you can probably tell from the before photos, it was in disarray. There was no flooring on the inside. It was dirt and it had been abandoned basically. And And so we hired a contractor to just, get this up to par in order to have it be a nice residence property. So, I mean, we trusted the contractor to do that. We did take the balcony top off just for safety because it was a very short and we didn't want people to go out there and think they could stand out there through the window. So I know that's the reason we took that off. As far as the overall windows, I mean, the picture windows, so for an apartment, it's very nice to have a nice picture window out of your view. But as far as like not submitting the proposal, I mean, I hired a contractor and, I apologize that this wasn't done. I mean, I'm not really sure now for as much money as we spent, which was like probably $250,000 to redo this, how we would actually be able to justify making additional changes to this property, considering how much money we went into the renovations inside and out. So this is the first I'm hearing about that recommendation, obviously. So we want to make it historic with the neighborhood. We can do certain things, but there's certain limitations financially that I would imagine we'd have to consider for some of these items.
Do you have any questions for the applicant? Michael, no building permits? No building permits on this were required or
I'm
taken?
sorry?
Were there any building permits or any kind of permit that was done on this structure? I mean, and as far as the applicant goes as well, any permits that may have been pulled by the contractor on this?
I know for sure there was like electrical or plumbing or something because I had to go meet them one day whenever he was not available, so.
Most of the exterior work would be work that wouldn't have required a permit. So it may have been the case where they were doing interior work that triggered permits, but because the exterior, you don't need a permit to replace windows, you don't need a permit to replace doors, et cetera, that interior remodel permit didn't trigger the requirement for a certificate of approval.
Okay. Yeah, it was completely regutted and framed. Everything's brand new. I mean, it's like a brand new building.
This is my ignorance, but in that case, how does the average person doing a remodel know about the overlay at that point if your professional person is not the one that's going to? I've done tons of development, and I always have to rely on those professionals to help us understand.
Yeah, it's just as far as the overlay and the requirement that you get approvals for exterior work, it's just part of your zoning. So property owners, professionals that they hire need to not only know the rules to get the building permits, but need to know what their zoning does and does not allow. And I know that that's challenging, and
it was during the pandemic
we
as
hope
well,
we do training for realtors on a somewhat regular basis in the hopes that those realtors will pass that information along to buyers. But particularly with this kind of thing where maybe you're doing interior work, but it doesn't flip that switch for the exterior work, I know that it is a challenge for property owners.
We see this a fair amount.
I'm not sure that, the windows meet residential code. So they'd have to be operable.
Are they casement? Do they open?
That is the only windows that are like that. Each apartment has 10 or more windows that are like that middle window where they are open.
Is that into a living space or is it into a bedroom?
And within that living space, there are 2 open windows on the side.
So it's not a bedroom. So it would, if it's into just a living space, then it would be acceptable.
I guess I just assumed they were all like that all the way around.
No, just the front windows.
I'm looking at the staff recommendation. I'm not sure where to go with this, because if they were to meet all the criteria in A through E, they'd likely have to come back anyways.
I think we've made it contingent that these items, these 5 items, A through E, would come back to staff, unless it's the preference of the commission for it to come back to the commission, in which case you'd need to modify the written recommendation that's in your staff report.
Okay.
I'd like to comment on just from the aesthetic, looking at the very front, although the building is built in 1918, however, the architectural is, you could argue that it's very modern. And the windows, the front doors, the side lights, in my opinion, it complement the building well. Even the balcony, I think the balcony looks very historic. However, you could argue it doesn't really flow with the design of the building. I mean, we have a few architects in here. I think you guys can comment on that better than I do. But just from a, owner, developer, investor, I mean, you've done a nice remodel from the outside. Consider what it was. You said it was in disrepair and not livable condition. I think it's quite a bit of a list here based on staff recommendation.
I tend to agree with Commissioner Cowell about the look. It is a bit modernized, and I wonder if the issue on the balcony is the railing, that the railing is missing, or that it's the style of railing, because you see the railing at the bottom has also been changed to be more modern. So if that railing was added back to the top for a balcony, would that suffice? Or
Well, I think that if they, we've made a request that they recreate that balcony that used to be on top of the canopy, and I think if they use the same railing that they've used on the stoop at the first level, that would be consistent with what they've done below. We don't have any issue with the railing they've done on the first floor, so if they use the same type of railing, that would probably be acceptable.
I will, just real quick, we do have a Google Street View shows a much older photo of the building. There also was once a parapet at the top that was removed that makes it look a little bit less of a modern style. We didn't include that because that was done so long ago that that was also done without approval, but that was not under the current owner, and it's been quite some time since that was removed. But that gives you a little bit more of a sense of kind of the original character of the structure.
that was gorgeous. Well.
So I'm going to put forward a motion consistent with staff's recommendations, if everybody's
Okay.
okay with that. I'm going to put forward a motion to approve the application on the basis that the project meet the regulations and guidelines of the Urban Design Overlay District zoning ordinance as referenced in section C and D of the staff report, with the condition that the applicant remove the 4 replacement windows at the east elevation of the building and replace them with new windows that match the design of the previous windows, including the material, type of window, operable double hung, and the quantity, size, and position of the glass panes. The applicant shall remove the 2 side lights at the entry door at the east elevation and shall replace them with new side light windows that more closely match the previous side light windows in terms of design, pattern, and quantity, and the quantity, size, and position of the glass panes. Applicant replace the front door. The applicant install a balcony railing on top of the canopy at the east elevation to replicate the balcony railing that was removed or the railing down on the lower level, and the applicant shall replace the wooden posts installed at the main entry at the elevation with acceptable columns.
So before we proceed with the motion, we need to confirm that the applicant
That's true.
agrees to all
Okay.
those conditions. You can either take an approval with conditions now, go forward and work with staff, and if any of these things cannot be met, we can come back to the commission for further discussion. Or if you don't agree to the conditions at this time, we can continue the application to a future meeting, and you can converse with us further about what you'd be willing to do and what you think is just not feasible or is not necessary, meets the guidelines, et cetera. Or you can ask for an up or down vote and take a denial and appeal to Board of Adjustment. Those are kind of your options.
I have to make that decision right now, huh? I mean, I would like to say, after as much money I put into this thing to make it livable and usable for the city, I don't really feel like I want to do anything else to this. So I would say I would not want to do those things. It's just too much money. I spent too much. I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to fix this. So I get that I hired a contractor and maybe there's something there, but it's a very nice place for people to live. If there's something I could do with the side lights, and I'm sure I could do something like that, but everything else is very expensive. And I don't know that that's an excuse, but I just don't know how to come up with the money to do another $20,000 or $30,000 worth of work.
I have a question. When they're replacing a door that matches the original door, one that's consistent with the style of the building, how far, like, does it need to be the exact door in this? How far, what's our precedent there?
Yeah,
Like, what
so,
have we
so
typically done?
generally with, you know, primary facade, architectural features like doors and windows, we want them to approximate what was there, to use something that is a compatible architectural style, but we know a lot of times those, you know, depending on how ornate the door was, it may be very difficult to find a match without having a custom-built door. So there's some flexibility there on, you know,
The side
a
lights,
commercially
because these
produced door and side lights that is still appropriate to the building. And I know sometimes people have issues with security and how much glazing there is on the door, that sort of thing. So I think we have some flexibility there.
And what renders these side lights in this door to not be consistent with the style of the building in the staff's opinion? I mean, my personal just aesthetic opinion is that I liked everything before, the way it looked historically, but I want to get more understanding here for.
Since we have a motion in play, do we
guess-
need to finalize it?
Yes, or
But
it depends if you'd like.
that's where it's a little bit strange, because it's not typically we ask for a continuance.
But there's no desire for continuance.
Agreed, so I guess.
I
I'm
do
gonna-
have a question, though. Katie, earlier you showed some historic photos where the top of the building with historic character that was removed. Does that predate the urban design overlay?
So
I mean-
it doesn't, but it appears to have happened more than 10 years ago under a different owner, so we didn't include it in this.
I think that's a critical factor. Could that change my perspective on how the porch design, because the porch design was out of place, I thought. But if you show that photo, then it makes sense. However, that's gone. That historic feature on top of the building is gone. So I think that's a critical discussion piece we should have.
Okay, so if we can't continue it, and the recommendation's not something that we can proceed with, I'm at a loss as to what the next step is.
So from the standpoint of continuance, based on what has been discussed today, and maybe there needs to be just a little bit more of us guiding staff with what we are comfortable with or what we are not comfortable with. For example, the front door and side light is something that I would not ask that be replaced myself, personally. I don't think that that's such a drastic difference from what's there, just from what I can see from photographs. The biggest thing for me, the striking thing, is the windows, and that's also the most expensive thing. So it seems to me like a continuance might be in your best interest to have a conversation with staff about what you would be willing to do, and you can justify things the way you wish. But if we deny, then you have to do, or you have to have a variance. If you go for a variance, you have to spend money to do the variance, and then it's either up or down.
The appeal.
These
the
are all
appeal.
guidelines. None of what we've talked about in this staff report is a regulation.
Okay.
So,
She would be going to Board of Adjustment to appeal the denial, not for a variance.
That's what
Yeah.
okay.
So,
right.
but similarly,
Correct.
it's another application fee,
Another cost,
another cost.
and an up or down,
Aside from a continuation, which would be a discussion,
a conversation.
conversation. Let's do a continuation. You sold me on that.
Okay.
Could we continue to the December meeting?
It's too late for November, so it'd have to be December 20th.
So,
The November meeting, just so you are all aware, we move that up traditionally every year from the fourth week to the third to stay away from Thanksgiving, so we have a better chance of getting a quorum. And therefore, we are already putting some of the final touches on that agenda packet for the November meeting, so it's too late for that.
and just as a point of order, would you like to withdraw that original motion?
I would.
Okay.
I'd entertain a motion for a continuance to the December meeting. I think we need to have a motion from someone to continue.
I'll make a motion to continue this until the December 20th, 2023 meeting.
We have a motion and a second, if everyone will cast their vote.
Who was the second?
Nathan.
Nathan,
Okay.
and that passes.
Okay.
Thank you.
So if you'll reach out to staff sooner rather than later, we can get together and talk through what kind of your options are and how to go forward. And yeah, thanks.
Okay, item D is UDCA 23-00029 at 726 Northwest 23rd Street in the Uptown Northwest 23rd Street. Is the applicant present? Michael, do you want to present the
Thank
case?
you, Mr. Chair. This application is for a existing structure at 726 Northwest 23rd Street. It's on the south side of Northwest 23rd, just, excuse me, just east of Chartel. This is existing residence or structure. It was a residential structure, but it's not being used residentially anymore. It's been vacated and sold. It's immediately adjacent to the Gaidu's restaurant at the south east corner of 23rd and Chartel. As you can see by the long list of items that are being proposed here, from the demolition of some of the existing features of the structure all the way down to the screening and fencing, there's probably 30 items that are being proposed in association with this project. We've identified for the commission in the staff report a few areas where we have concerns. And like the last item, both of the concerns we've raised are guidelines, and they are guidelines not from the UD, but from the Building Conservation and Rehabilitation Guidelines. So the first has to do with the entry door on the north facade that faces Northwest 23rd. The applicant has proposed to remove the door that lines up with the stairs that come up to the front of the building and replace that with a pane of sheet glass, and move the location of that entry door to the east facade of the porch addition, which is being enclosed. At least the western 2/3 of that porch are being enclosed. And they'd like to have that door relocated to the east wall of that porch enclosure. They've indicated that the reason behind that is because of the north wind conditions coming into the front door and blowing through the restaurant and other elements associated with climate, so on and so forth. However, we're bound by what the guidelines say, and they pretty much say you should not move an existing entry from where it's located. So we've laid that out for the planning, the Design Commission in our staff report, and our position is that we would recommend approval of this project if the applicant would revise the floor plan and the elevations for review by staff and show the front entry in the existing location with a replacement door that matches the architectural character of the structure. And that door is the second point of contention with relationship to those guidelines. Whether it be mounted where it is in its current location, or whether it be approved by the commission to move it to the east wall of the porch enclosure, the applicant has proposed that the entry door be a modern glass storefront type of a entry door, whereas it's staff's contention that the guidelines would suggest that the entry door should remain consistent with the architectural character of the structure. And therefore, our position as staff is that if the door is left where it is, per the commission's determination, or if it is moved to the east wall of the porch, that the door should have some relationship to the architectural character of the original door that might have been placed there when the building was built. I will say that if the commission were to allow the entry door location to be moved to the side wall of the porch enclosure, our concern about the type of door that is used is reduced somewhat because it won't be seen necessarily very much from the front elevation or from people that are walking up and down 23rd or driving up and down 23rd. It'll be much less visible if it's placed on the east wall of the porch enclosure than it would be if it's left where it is today. So, in conclusion, we have recommended approval of the project with the condition of approval that revised plans be provided that show the door not being moved from where it is, and that a new replacement door be used rather than a solid glass storefront door. And that concludes our presentation. We're prepared to respond to any questions that the commission may have.
Do the commissioners have any questions for staff? The applicant.
Doors and windows today.
Would the applicant like to add?
Hi, Ken Fitzsimmons of Task Design, 1300 Northwest 17th. And the main reason, as Michael stated, that we'd like to move the door from the north to the east is the wind. This is Jared and Wayne, by the way, the owners. And currently they do have a north door at Gaiudes, and we put a glass panel in front of it to try to alleviate some of the wind coming through, but it still happens. So that's been one of the concerns, trying to move this door to the east, and also the floor plan, which I realize doesn't have a bearing necessarily for exterior comments, but just to let you know, it was, works better for the flow of staff going in and out and so forth. The hope was, I understand the guidelines too, but we were hoping that we could plead with you guys to maybe consider the enclosure. The idea was to make it look more current, because the idea is to let the old be old and stand out, and let the new be distinct and clear, so it doesn't confuse current and future passersby so that they can clearly understand, oh, those are old columns, the old stucco wall. They see a more modern glass behind that, and they understand that was of a different time period. So it's about, trying to be more honest with the time in which the different elements were on the building. So that's really our main hope, is that we could convince you to please let us put the door on the east. And we've also discussed with Michael maybe compromise if we had a more traditional door to replace the north door, which is not original. It's kind of a Home Depot, Lowe's door that you see all the time. If we were to replace that, if we put something more traditional, more older looking there, but still maybe be able to leave the storefront door on the east as we propose in the design, if that's something that that you would consider. So at any rate, those are our thoughts on the entry and the porch enclosure. Did you guys have any? Okay.
And I'll just add, looking at the existing building, there's the existing historic door opening has the original, presumably original woodwork around the door and the side
Right,
lights.
and
So
we're not
if-
proposing to take that away.
Okay,
Just replacing the
rendering
non-original door.
doesn't show that in detail, so I
Okay.
think that does help to say that trim around the door would stay, and it would still kind of read as the original entrance, but then you actually go in this more modern door. Sorry, I'm just jumping right in.
Do we have any questions for the applicant?
I'm sorry, so the west side, that's a new accessible door because there's just not really a feasible way to make the front porch accessible from the front. So we're talking about the door. There's a door on the porch when you go up the steps. It's on the north. And so that was one discussion, is about whether that door becomes glass or something traditional. We're proposing to enclose a portion of the porch with glass and have that door also be glass to match that, so it reads as a more, something that reads as more contemporary, but at the same time you can see through the glass, so it's very clear. You can still see all the porch elements from the inside and the outside. So it's really just, in our mind, it was kind of like just kind of screening in a porch, if you will, trying to make it something you still see all the elements, not taken away from that, but just trying to do it as in an invisible way as we can to add some more seating for the interior and to, again, give some more protection from the elements when they do open the main door, or people that go in and out of the north side.
So did I hear you correctly that one of the things that you would consider is in the original location of the door, you could leave a fixed panel representative of a door? It looks like a door, maybe or maybe does not have hardware on it. You'd put
Right.
some kind of a mark that says entrance.
Right, that would be if that would be, what we need to do, I think that you guys would be okay with that. Yeah.
So it's fixed, there's nothing to grab a hold of,
Right.
I'm not trying to, I probably shouldn't even, I'm curious if that was what you were saying. So that helps me understand better. Do we have any other questions for the applicant? In the absence of questions, I'll entertain a motion.
I'd like to motion to approve the application on the basis that the project meets the regulations and guidelines of the Urban Design Overlay District zoning ordinance as referenced in Section C and D of the staff report, with the condition that the applicant shall submit a revised floor plan and revised elevations for review and approval by staff. These plans shall show the front entry in the existing location with a new replacement door that shall be architecturally compatible with the design character of the existing structure and matching in materials and finish. Instead of an entry door at the east wall of the porch enclosure, the applicant shall incorporate a low wall with glass, with window glass to match the proposed treatments of the front and west side of the porch enclosure.
So that motion is there. It is a little different than what I thought we were discussing, which would be that they would put a door in its spot, but they would leave the door also towards the east. They could enter. So
Correct.
that is your motion, and we
I'm
can
sorry?
up or down it. So
That is the motion, that they
okay.
will be able to still, that the door in the east would still be there.
the door that they can enter as
That's
proposed.
as
Okay.
proposed, I'm sorry.
So modified to where visually in the original door's location, there is a door fixed and an active door where they propose it. That's the motion?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I have a motion. Can I get a second? I have a motion and a second, if everybody will cast their vote. And that passes. Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, so item 7 is other business. We have the calendar, which was included in our packet.
We do.
It is for,
We do. Always this time of year, the city clerk starts threatening a wet noodle lashing if we don't get our calendars in to them for publication and posting for the upcoming year. So every time we meet around this time of the year, and at the time we put this together, we weren't sure we were going to have a November meeting, but we will have one. But in case we didn't, we decided to put this calendar on this agenda for your consideration. Essentially, not essentially, for sure, this calendar matches the same pattern that we have every year, which is we meet on the fourth Wednesday of every month, with the exception of November and December. And also the submittal deadlines for those meeting dates are always the day before the meeting of the previous month. Hopefully that's not too convoluted, but sometimes people get lost with that, but that's the way it's been done for as long as I've been here. So anyway, we're recommending that the commission adopt this calendar so that we can pass it along to the city clerk's office.
so unless there are any questions for staff, I'll entertain a motion to approve the calendar.
I'd like to motion that we approve the 2024 Urban Design Commission meeting calendar.
I have a motion. I have a second. Everybody cast their vote. That motion passes. Thank you all. So item 8 is communications. There are several items under the administrative approval report, none of which that we need to specifically have any conversation about unless somebody wants to. And hearing none, item 8B is commission comments from planning department staff.
Just that reminder that we gave you earlier that we're not meeting on November 22nd. We're meeting on November 15th for the November meeting, and we do have at least 2 items for your consideration at that meeting. So,
Okay, and item C is, do we have any comments from commissioners? Hearing none, as Michael said, we have our next regular commission meeting on Wednesday, November the 15th. And with that, we are adjourned.